A big thanks to masterbuilt for sponsoring this video.
This is the most viral recipe of 2023. And of course, it starts with a beautiful pork belly. And I'm not just talking about crispy pork skin. I'm talking about those long strings that are really crunchy. And it's the most delicious thing that's going to break your beach body diet for 2023. You're not gonna be that hot guy anymore. Like Johnny Bravo. This is a pork belly out of my own home-raised pigs. This one is probably from Daisy. Yeah, that's Daisy. I think it's Daisy. And the best thing about having your homegrown pigs and getting meat of them is the dark red color that you get. Look at this. This dark red color means the meat has had time to build up color and flavor in the meat. When you buy pork in the supermarket, you see that the meat is pink light. It's supposed to have a dark red color like this. It's supposed to have flavor. You can see where the ribs used to be, they've been cut out, and we still left the skin on, which is very essential to making chicharrones. Of course, I'm using a big piece like this. You can have a smaller piece. Just go to your local butchers and ask them for a free-ranged piece of pork belly with the skin on. I'm going to cut up my pork belly into 2-finger-thick strips. And you don't want to go any thinner than that, because once you start cooking, rendering down the fat, frying everything up, the chicharrones is going to shrink down, it's going to become much smaller, and therefore it might break if you have it too thin. Now there are a lot of ways to cook this. For instance, we can boil this with spices and then render down the fat. But I have a better way, a technique that's going to have the same effect, but adds more flavor to this beautiful piece of pork. Let's make some seasoning, starting with 5 bay leaves, followed by 20 peppercorns, a tablespoon of salt, 6 garlic cloves, and 2 red onions cut up into quarts. And I'm gonna grind it all fine in my pestle and mortar. That's gonna give it a unique effect. It's gonna have a crunchy, slushy consistency where everything is mixed in together and becomes very powerful. I've got my first layer of flavor on. Now I'm going to apply the second layer of flavor, which is smoking. So it's time to take out the masterbuilt, load it up with charcoal, and fire it up. Set it to a temperature of 120 degrees Celsius. And then on goes the pork belly. Now while that's cooking, I'm going to make my first sauce. This is the mole roja, red sauce. I heated up some olive oil and I'm going to add a little bit of diced onion. And once you see that bubble, you know it's good to go. And it starts with 5 quartered tomatoes. I'm gonna let these tomatoes fry for around 10 to 15 minutes until they turn completely soft. I need them to fall apart. And you can see it's starting to turn soft. Time to add half a diced onion, 6 fine diced garlic cloves, and of course some diced Mexican chilies. These are smoked in advance and are gonna make up a lot of flavor for the sauce. Now all this needs is 1 tablespoon of salt, and then I'm gonna give this sauce another 10 minutes to simmer away to become completely soft, and all the onions and garlic is gonna melt together and turn into something absolutely freaking delicious. Whoa, look at that! Creamy, rich, delicious. Salsa roja. But I'm not gonna stop here. Guess what? Of course, it's guacamole. I'm gonna de-seed these 3 avocados, then scoop out the meat, squash it fine with my fork, dice fine 1 tomato, followed by a red onion and a bunch of fresh cilantro. Of course, we need to boost the flavor with 2 teaspoons of finishing salt and half a teaspoon of fresh ground pepper. Now I'm gonna mix all of that up, bringing it together, making this a real guacamole. Now there's 2 things you need to consider. One is the consistency. You gotta have the avocados that are really ripe, so you can squish them with your fork, and at the same time you know they're really done and they're gonna give you that rich, sweet, creamy experience. And the second thing is that you don't want to add too much tomato or onion, because that's just going to overwhelm the guacamole. The guacamole is all about the avocado, just a little bit of lime to keep the color real nice and green. Of course, I gotta perform my taste test. I'm on a roll here. This is top-notch stuff. And after an hour, they look like this. Wow, absolutely freaking delicious. Look at my beautiful pork belly. Juicy, red color from the smoke. I'm gonna take them all off. This already looks freaking delicious. We got the spices that drawn into the pork meat. And of course, I wanna give this a try to make sure that it picked up the flavor that I'm looking for. Look at that. Smoke ring on the inside, which means the smoke flavor penetrated. Let's give this a try. Oh. The flavor is there, this tastes absolutely freaking delicious, but I'm missing the key factor of chicharrones. I am missing the crunch. It is now just juicy and succulent and very, very tasty, but not crunchy. So, time for the next phase. I'm gonna take my Scotsburg pan and then melt down pork fat that I harvested for my own pigs. I'm gonna let it come up to a temperature of around 160 degrees Celsius. I don't want to go too high in the temperatures because one, I'm cooking in pork fat and I don't want the fat to burn. Second is that I still need loads of time to expel moisture from my pork to get it nice and crispy, so it's got to go in at a low temperature so it has more time to fry. And because I'm not using a fryer, which has a regulator inside of it, I'm constantly checking the temperatures to make sure that it doesn't go too high and that I burn my beautiful chicharrones. You also want to be careful with the juices that come out of that pork belly, because it might come up to the surface and explode. So be careful with that. This is starting to look good. We're getting a fry. I'm getting a little bit of crunch on the outside of the skin, but I need way more of that. I'm looking at the color to see when it's done. I'm also looking for sound. Once everything is crisp, it's time to take them out of the pan, put them on a cooling rack, and let them dry. I fried them until they had a beautiful crispy popcorn on the outside of the skin. Then I let them cool down for around 5 to 10 minutes until they're cool enough to eat. And now they got that real crispy exterior. That is crunchy. Oh, and here's the secret to make it even better. First, dip it in the guacamole, then in the salsa roja. That's just ridiculous. Name one dish from a single country that is as good and as satisfying as this.